Hello. What I wanted to do what I wanted to do was provide a resource for you guys to help you out with Excel, as well as to help you out with the analyzing and journal process. So, what we're going to do is we're going to have probably about 3 or 4 videos that are about 15 minutes long. And I'm going to first show you how to set up Excel to get the proper journal or get your journal in proper form. Then we're going to go through a number of transactions. Now, these transactions are something that you will see in every single problem that you do, right? Even when you get out in the real world. You're always going to have a time where owner invests cash. You're always going to have a time where you prepay rent or prepay insurance. You're also going to have a time when you purchase, whether it be supplies, inventory, supplies or inventory on account. You're always going to have a time where you sign a note for cash. You're always going to have an example when you buy equipment. So I wanted to walk through these and really show you what to do, as well as provide a resource for you guys so you can use it. You can use it as you like. You can use it to help you with homework. You can just watch it while you're working on or use it to help you on your exercises, whatever. So first thing I want to do is I opened up an Excel workbook, and I just want to go ahead and I want to create my journal. Now, I already created it for you, but I want to show you guys how to do that in case you ever have to do it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a date column. Second thing I'm going to do is I need to create a space for me to put in my accounts as well as my explanations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to arbitrarily pick a certain number of columns, right? I'm going to start at B1 and I'm going to go to E1. What I want to do is I want to merge and center these columns, and you just do that by going on the ribbon and clicking Merge and Center. Now, by doing this, what happens is it takes these, 4 cells, and it turns them into one big cell, okay? If I input any data, if I write anything inside the cell, it's going to be centered. We don't want that. So we need to make sure that the cell is formatted with a right align. In order to figure that out, or in order to accomplish that, all you have to do is come up to your ribbon, and there's a button here that says left align. I'm going to click it, okay? Now, I want all the rows below this point to have the same cell, right? All these, so in other words, in row 2, I want cells B2 through E2 to be merged and centered, left aligned. I want the same thing for row 3, meaning I want B3 and E3 to be centered, merged and centered with the left align. That's a pain in the butt to do that all the time, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my little crosshairs, meaning I'm going to take my mouse and I'm going to put it right at the bottom right of the cell until it turns into little crosshairs. And I'm going to click and drag down. Again, I'm just picking an arbitrary amount. And I let go, and what it did is it formatted all the cells beneath B1 identical to what B1 is. So all these cells down here are formatted the same way as this first original cell is, okay? Now I need to create my debit and credit column. So I'm going to go into F1, I'm going to type DR, and I'm going to hit Tab, and I'm going to go over to G1, and I'm going to type CR, which is an abbreviation for credit. Now, I want F1 and G1, the debits and credits, I want those to be centered in the middle of the column. So I'm going to click on F1, and I'm going to come right here to where it says Center Text, and I'm going to click it. And look what it does. It moved debit in the middle. of the cell. I'm going to do the same thing with G1. Okay? Now, I want all my numbers in this journal to be in account form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my mouse over the F row. I'm going to click it, and I'm going to drag over to G. And notice what I did was I highlighted column F and column G. So I'm going to come up here on the ribbon, and I'm going to select comma style because I want commas in my numbers. Okay, now look what happens. Let's just say I type in, I don't know, 3256. It puts it in proper form, right? It gives me my comma, gives me 2 decimal places. I don't want decimal places because in our homework on the exam, you're not really going to have cents. You're not going to have to worry about cents. So in order to fix this, I'm going to go back and put my mouse over the F column, and I'm going to drag it over to the G column. Okay? And if you look on the ribbon, notice it says accounting. That means that these 2 rows are formatted in accounting style. Okay? But I want to get rid of the decimal places. In order to do that, I come right here on this button, and this button says decrease decimals. I'm going to hit it twice, and watch what happens to the 3256. Boom, boom. Decreases. Okay? And then in cell B1, I'm going to type in account. The word account, so I know that these are my accounts. So that's where my accounts go. Now, like I said in the beginning of the video, there are a number of transactions that will keep repeating themselves. So in these next couple videos, what I want to do is I want to demonstrate for you how to analyze the transaction as well as make the proper journal entry. Okay, so the first transaction we're most definitely always going to see is when a owner invests money into their company. Okay, so let me give you an example here. I'm going to come right here and just type just so you can see, give you more of a visual as well. So let's say on January 1st or January 1, Steve Gates contributes helps if you can spell contributes $30,000 into his business. Okay, so whenever we're doing journal entries, right? If you remember, I said, think of this as putting a puzzle together, right? We have the picture right here. January 1st, Steve Gates contributes $30,000. Oh, that shouldn't be a @ sign. That should be a $sign. $30,000 into his business. Okay, that's the whole picture, right? I need to take it apart, take this verbiage apart, and put it into accounting words or accounting form. Super duper easy, right? First thing we need to do, or first thing we need to recognize, is that every single journal entry will have at least 2 accounts. Okay? Every single journal entry will have at least 2 accounts. That's number 1. Number 2, every single journal entry must have at least 1 debit, 1 credit. Okay? Number 3, debits and credits always must equal after each transaction. Okay? So how does this compare to what we did in the beginning? Well, in the beginning, we tried to keep the accounting equation in balance, right? Because we have debits and credits and we're going to utilize debits and credits, guess what? By default, the accounting equation will always be in order or always be in balance as long as we recognize the right account and we recognize the right behavior of each account, meaning is it increase with a debit, increase with a credit, okay? So let's analyze this first one. January 1st, Steve Gates contributes $30,000 into his business. So I know I need a dollar amount. I know I need at least 2 accounts, and each of those accounts has to be a debit and a credit, okay? I read this right off the bat. I know cash is one account, right? Why? Because the owner contributed $30,000 cash into the account, okay? So that's number 1. I got the account. Number 2, I got the dollar amount. Now, I need to decide, is it a debit or is it credit? Well, cash is an asset. Assets increase with a debit. Assets decrease with a credit, okay? Cash is an asset. My cash is going up. What do I have to do? I have to debit it. So I always put my debits first, and I'm going to say cash, $30,000, okay? Now I got to figure out what my credit is. Now, without knowing anything, okay, without looking at my little cheat sheet, I know right off the bat that I need at least another account, and that account has to be credited, okay? So I'm going to say $30,000 credit. Oh, sorry. $30,000 credit. Now, what account am I crediting? Well, Steve Gates, he's the owner. He invested $30,000 cash into his own business, so it must be a owner's equity account. That's the account that I have to hit. Great. I'm going to go ahead and just plug it in. Okay. So I'm not done. Remember, credits always have to be indented. How do I indent? Well, very simple. If I go to my ribbon and to the left of this merge and center button, I have 2 buttons. One says decrease indents. The other one says increase indents. Well, I want to increase my indent, so I'm just going to click it once. Okay, no need to hit space bars. Just click that button to get your indent. Okay. What happened here? Well, I need to put in my explanation. I'm going to italicize it. How do I italicize something? Well, I go to my font section of the ribbon. I go underneath to the button between the bold and the underline button. It says italic. I'm going to click it, and I'm going to say owner contributed cash. Okay. Oh, forgot to put the date, which is 1/1. Okay. Now, the next thing we're always going to see is there's always going to be a time when the business spends cash to get something, right? We can spend cash to get an asset. We can spend cash to get supplies. We can spend cash to get inventory, okay? So let's look at this example here. Oh, by the way, always skip a space between your journal entries, please. Makes it much more nice and neat and easy to read. So transaction number 2, which you're most often always going to see something like it, okay? And let's just say on 1/1, or let's say January 2nd, okay, because this is a second type of transaction we'll see. We'll call this company Acme, right? Acme Company. Acme Company prepaid rent for an office space covering the next 6 months. Okay. Monthly rent is $1,800. Okay. So right off the bat, I need to interpret this, right? The problem says, or the transaction says, I prepaid rent. I prepaid rent. Okay? So what that means is I purchased, or I went to my landlord and I says, hey landlord, instead of paying you every month $1,800, I'm going to take $10,800 in cash that I have, and I'm going to give it to you. And that's going to cover my rent for the next 6 months. Okay? Think about it in terms maybe that you can understand. Instead of you paying your tuition bill every month, right? Maybe you guys get financial aid. Financial aid comes and they pay the school, right? Well, the school didn't provide you a service yet, right? You prepaid your tuition, right? They owe you service. This is the same scenario. We prepaid rent. We are now entitled to a service for us, okay? So anytime we prepay something, we always use prepaid rent, prepaid supplies, prepaid insurance, whatever, okay? Any prepaid, I'm going to say an expense, but please don't get confused. I'm not expensing anything right now. I'm just saying any prepaid expense, like rent, will eventually turn into an expense. Insurance, at some point in time, once we use it, will definitely turn into an expense. Same thing with supplies. Once we use those supplies, at some point in time in the future, they will turn into an expense. But right now, we have prepaid those. They're an asset to us. Okay, so any prepayment is always, always, always going to be an asset. Okay, so I identified my first account, prepaid rent. What's my second? Well, second account is going to be cash. How do I know that? Nowhere in there does it say cash, but it says I prepaid something. Anytime you see paid, automatically, without fail, when you see paid, we're hitting our cash account. Always, always, always. Okay? So I identified my two accounts, prepaid rent and cash. Now I got to identify the dollar amount. Well, I pay $1,800 per month. I prepaid for 6 months. 6 times 1,800 is going to give me $10,800. So guess what? Right off the bat, I have $10,800 of a debit, $10,800 of a credit. Okay? Now I got to figure out which account is debited, which account is credited. Well, think about it. Both of these accounts are assets, right? How do I increase an asset? I increase an asset with a debit. I decrease an asset with a credit, okay? So my prepaid rent is increasing. Prepaid rent is always an asset, so I must debit my prepaid rent. What am I going to credit? Well, it's cash. No brainer. Don't even have to think about it. It's cash. Why is it cash? Because I prepaid my rent. How did I prepay it? The only way to prepay something is with cash. Okay? So remember, I need to indent my credit. So I just click my button to indent. I'm going to type in cash, and I have my dollar amount. Okay? So we're going to wrap this video up. I showed you how to set up your Excel spreadsheet to get your journal. And we demonstrated 2 transactions that you're most always going to see. You're always going to see an owner contributing cash to a company. You're always going to see, almost always going to see, a company prepaying their expenses. Okay? If you prepay an expense, that's an asset to the company. Okay? When we come back, we're going to go through a couple more transactions. So tune back in for that one, please.